Be faithful in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my refuge. Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Maggie Rutherford, and I am so delighted to be here with you all. I approach the beginning of our journey with reverence and anticipation for how God will lead us. I trust that in time we will grow together in faith and relationship. One thing to know about me is that I am a big-time camp person. I grew up attending both St. Dorothy's Rest and the Bishop's Ranch, and went on to work at St. Dorothy's Rest for 8 years. A few of you may have heard at my ordination yesterday in the Matthew sermon that one of the lessons I learned during my time at camp that I think will be very important for my future in ministry is how to fail well. Camp was a safe place for me to mess up and get feedback and try again. In today's selection from Matthew's Gospel, Jesus is telling the disciples yet another parable in a series of parables. Jesus compares the kingdom of heaven to someone who planted a full and good crop, or so they thought. Yet, unbeknownst to them, someone came and planted weeds alongside their grain, ultimately making the harvesting process more difficult when time came. And instead of tossing aside his crop, he let it all grow and waited to burn the weeds, but harvested the wheat. Sometimes this parable is used to try to divide people into categories of good and bad. And often we assume that we are the good people who have surely curried favor of God and will be saved from the fire. We are so sure we know who these bad people are. And we're sure that it's definitely not us. And we've been conditioned to fear both being bad and that mysterious person who we deem bad. But this is exactly what Jesus warns us of. For it is not our job to sort people out. And in fact, we're not even equipped for that task. There are many forces in this world that try their hardest every day to tear us from one another, to turn our back against our neighbor. Those are the weeds worming their way into our daily habits and patterns, drawing us away from God. But we who are sinners have no authority over the sins of others. When the harvest comes, God will be able to see into our hearts. Our pride will be stripped away as we are purified in the fire. God will see us for who God created us to be. And the temptations of the world will also be stripped away. The evil of the world that has taken root in each of us will not survive in the kingdom of heaven. And thank God for that. In this, we are not alone. The excerpt from Paul's letter to the Romans shows that all of creation walks alongside us in this. For the creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the children of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not of its own will, but by the will of the one who subjected it. Creation, too, is subject to the wiles of sin and looks to God for release. Looking also to the wisdom of Solomon, we get a brief snapshot of the history of God's relationship with God's people. God declares his power and mercy. God's people rebel and turn away from God. And in return, God's judgment is mild. This is a pattern which appears throughout both the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament, showing the give and take between God and the Israelites and eventually the Gentiles. Our rebelling, engaging in the stuff of the world which draws us away from God, like sorting people into categories of good and bad. still, no church is immune to the weeds of the world. No cleric is immune to the weeds of the world. No person is immune to the weeds of the world. But God does not ask us to be. Instead, God asks us to keep showing up, even when it's hard to look ourselves in the mirror. Neither the weeds nor the wheat are the extraordinary facets of life. They usually show up in the mundane. After all, that's how the weeds get in. Sometimes, when we become aware a weed has taken root inside us, we think we have failed. And maybe we have. But that is never the end of the story. God calls us to draw closer and walk side by side into the purifying fire, trusting that God is guiding our steps. My hope, my prayer for our journey together is that we hold dear the blessing that is God's forgiveness, that we seek the light of Christ in one another, and that we may extend the mercy God has given us to all whom we encounter. Amen.
Amen.